What's going on, guys? It's Ben with liftedimports.com here, and I am going to share with you today real quick just a couple of things about Subaru spacer lift kits. Particularly, I want to talk about these 3-inch lift kits that you have maybe been tempted to purchase. I want to just cover some basic misconceptions that I see out there and kind of just go over just some things that I think about these and give you guys some guidance. After we talk about that, I'd also like to give you just a little bit of, I guess, just some guidance as you start to look for a spacer lift for a Subaru. Just some different tips that I like to look out for when I'm shopping for them. Just some things that I've picked up over the years. So right out of the gate, let's just jump in. Let's talk about these 3-inch lift spacers that you've maybe been curious about. You've maybe even bought one of these, or maybe you've got it in your shopping cart on eBay or Amazon. A lot of these get sold because they're 3-inch lift kits. However, I want to share with you real quick the proper way to measure a Subaru lift kit is specifically the thickness of the spacer. That is how Subaru lift kit spacers are measured. It is from the top of the spacer to the bottom, because that is where your lift comes from, and that is exactly how much lift you will get from your lift kit. Is physically it's a 1-to-1 ratio, top to bottom. That's what you're getting when it comes to spacer lifts. That's how you measure it. Now, if you've got a spring lift, those are a little bit different. Those don't necessarily provide the same amount of lift as what they look like. As a matter of fact, some lift springs are actually smaller than your stock springs, but because they have a different spring rate, you'll actually end up with more lift because they don't compress once they have the weight of the car on them. However, we're just talking about lift kits that are of the strut spacer variety today. And let's go ahead. Again, this is a 3-inch lift spacer. At least that's what it was. That's how it was sold to me. I purchased this online just so that I could kind of take a look at it. I'm going to measure this for you guys real quick so you can see. It's not even 2 inches. It's actually 1 7/8 inches. Now, if there's anybody that knows what 2 inches looks like, it's me. And this is not even 2 inches. So, should you buy one of these? Well, number one, probably the only reason anybody buys these is because they're affordable. And when I say affordable, I mean cheap. And they are marketed as being a 3-inch lift kit. And everybody wants a 3-inch lift kit for a Subaru. So they just think, oh, well, I'll get this. Now, I don't care what they say on the websites. I don't care what they say on the eBay listing. I don't care what they say on the Amazon listing. Compound ratios have nothing to do with the way that Subaru lift kits work. When you lift a Subaru, it's a 1-to-1 ratio every time. If you don't believe me, buy it and try it out. Let me know what happens. Or you could do what I did, and you could call Patrick Anderson over at Anderson Design and Fabrication, which is the #1 Subaru lift kit manufacturer in the United States, and you could ask him. He told me the same thing. For every inch that you go with a spacer lift, you get 1 inch of lift. That's just how it is. That's how it works. If you don't like Anderson Design and Fabrication, you could go talk to Subi Lift Oz. Matt Chaplin, the owner of that company, he says the same thing. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. There's no such thing as compound ratios when you're lifting a Subaru. I have no idea why that's a thing. I fell for that crap actually back in the day, and I got that cleared up real fast. And if you've ever owned a Subaru that's had adjustable coilovers, you could go test this out if you want. You could literally go and adjust all your coilovers. You could lower or raise them 1 inch, take all your measurements, and you'll end up with an inch of lift or an inch of lowered ride height. You can experiment with it, and if you don't, I am just a random guy on the internet, but if you don't want to listen to what all these other people are saying, you can go test it for yourself. Now, let's just say, just for the sake of argument, let's just say that that was true. Let's just say that you really did get 3 inches of ground clearance by using a 1 7/8 inch spacer lift. Well, even if that was true, you're not doing an apples to apples comparison, because I guarantee a lot of you just saw, oh, it's a 3 inch lift. It'll be the biggest lift I can get. Oh, rad. And you're going to buy it. Now, that would be fine, but that's literally not even how anybody else does it. Even if that were true, that's not how the industry standard works. So you want to make sure that when you're buying stuff, you're getting an apples to apples comparison, and you're not spending your hard-earned money on something thinking you're going to get extra benefit that you're just not getting. So it's not a 3 inch lift. I don't know why that's a thing. I don't know why they say that, but I'm here to tell you that it's not true. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about when it comes to buying a budget lift, or an Amazon or an eBay lift that's from a less reputable brand. When it comes to Subaru spacers, something that you really want to look out for when you're lifting more than 1 inch, you always want to look for camber correction being built into the spacers. Now, this is a 2 inch lift spacer from Anderson Design and Fabrication. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this in the video very well, but I'm going to try, see if I can show this to you. You can see that the top of the spacer is actually shifted over in such a way that it allows the struts themselves to come down at a certain angle so that you don't end up with positive camber after doing the installation. You're going to have situations where if you don't do that, you're going to basically have just these goofy looking wheels. You're going to have to max out your camber bolts, and your camber bolts might not even do it. So you might have to go buy a second set of camber bolts to get your camber within spec. The alignment shop is going to be like, hey, we couldn't get the camber in, we couldn't get it into spec, so sorry. And then you're going to jump on the Facebook group and you're going to ask a bunch of us, hey, I can't get my alignment specs to work. And then we're going to ask what kind of lift you bought. And you're going to say, well, I bought a 3 inch lift. And I'm going to ask if you bought it on eBay. And you're going to say, yeah. And then I'm going to tell you to take it off and sell it. Okay. Man, I sound really mean, but I promise I'm not. I'm trying to help you guys. With spacer lifts more than 1 inch, I think it's important to look for camber correction being built into the spacer. Again, it's hard to see, but the top of the spacer is shifted slightly over to give you an offset that helps the car retain its factory suspension geometry. That is 100% one of the things that you should be looking out for as you buy spacer lifts, especially if it's 2 inches. Now, you'll notice that with these, they don't have that. There's really not any way to do that. I mean, maybe you could do that with a billet aluminum spacer. They could maybe design it a little bit differently, but nevertheless, these do not and have never had camber correction built into them, and it's more than the 1 inch threshold of where you would want to have that be a feature. One of the next things that you'll want to consider when you're purchasing a spacer lift is you're going to want to look at the hardware. So not only the spacer itself, but you're going to want to look at what do the studs look like? What grade of hardware are they using in these kits? Not only do these look cheap, but I have actually talked to people who have had the studs from these cheap eBay and Amazon lifts actually shear off. Now, basically the way that these work, they're not welded in the way that, ADF, Rally Tech, and, SLO, the way that they build theirs, they basically install a grade 10 stud, then they weld it into position, you're going to have a real hard time ever breaking one of these. It would be an absolute miracle if one of these were to shear off. You would probably need to be involved in a serious accident for that to happen. Now, with these, what you're doing basically, you're going to have these studs. I don't remember what they call these. It's an Allen wrench. They call them set screws, I think is what they call them. But you're going to screw this down into the aluminum and yada, yada, yada. You'll put this in, you'll snug it down with your Allen key, and then you've got your Wish app looking hardware. To me, this is the equivalent of when I was a kid, I would look at like Walmart skateboards and they would just have the worst hardware. That's what this looks like to me. This is like the fit and finish. This is just like made in China, stamped. Why? Beyond me. Gosh. But yeah, literally I was talking to somebody on a Facebook group last week, specifically had this kit, this exact kit. He sheared the bolts. He didn't say whether it was one or more of the spacers, but he sheared the bolts off. So you want to make sure that you've got good hardware. Email the companies that you're planning to purchase your kit from and just ask them, say, hey, what kind of hardware do you use? Is it grade 8? Is it grade 10? You really don't want anything below 8, but the reputable companies out there, they're going to run grade 10 hardware on their spacer lifts. And that is pretty, that's pretty standard practice as far as vehicle modifications go. You don't really want anything that's below a grade 8, let alone something that's holding your suspension together. Now, I've been pretty nice up to this point about not being super rude or anything. But I'm going to just say it infuriates me to think that there are products that people are purchasing that are actually shearing off. That blows my mind. Now, even if these were identical as far as design and functionality, but these still had the bad hardware, you got me fricked up if you think I'm going to give money and support to a product that is essentially not safe. Now, you could say, oh yeah, but you could just replace the hardware with better hardware. Okay, but why would I do that? That's like selling a parachute to somebody that doesn't function properly. And then you saying like, oh, well, you could just repack the parachute yourself and make it work. Okay, yeah, but what if I didn't know any better? Just that one fact is enough for me to never want to purchase parts from a company. If they pose any threat like that to your safety, why not spend a couple $100 extra and get something from guys like Anderson Design, Rally Tech, Primitive Racing? The list goes on. There's people that are in this. There's people that are with it. There's people that know how this stuff works. There's people who've been doing the R&D for our vehicles for years, and we owe them our support. We don't owe it to a cheap Chinese knockoff product. It's ridiculous. Okay, so another thing that really cemented for me the fact that most of these companies don't know what they're talking about with Subarus is these are not sold with the recommendation of purchasing trailing arm spacers or multi-link spacers on newer Subarus. If you are lifting a Subaru more than 1 inch or you're selling a lift kit for Subarus that's more than 1 inch, and you are not explicitly selling it to people with trailing arm spacers or multi-link spacers, you are not doing your job. These kits, a 2-inch lift kit, you need rear suspension geometry correction, because otherwise what's going to happen is your rear wheel is going to be pushed into the fender. And if you want to run oversized tires, or if you're going off-road, your tire is going to contact the body of your vehicle, and it just looks stupid. If you're going to, go to all the trouble of disassembling your suspension and installing a lift kit, why would you not do it correctly? And the fact that there's companies out there that are just selling 2-inch spacers all willy-nilly. Now, I did look, and they do offer rear trailing arm spacers for some of the Subaru models. But when I bought this, in the listing, it did not explicitly tell me, hey, you need rear trailing arm spacers. Because in my opinion, there should be a massive, massive banner across the listing saying, purchase this part as well, or it should just all come as one kit. So when you're looking for a good spacer lift, or any other lift that's 2 inches or more, you need either multi-link spacers if you have a multi-link suspension, or you need trailing arm spacers if you have the older McPherson style suspension setup. ADF, they do sell just the spacers. Like if you already had trailing arm spacers and you just needed the top, the top hat spacers, you could buy just these from them. But they're complete kits that they sell the majority of. Those come with everything. They come with trailing arm spacers, multi-link spacers. They also come with things like brake line spacers. They come with, I believe they come with sway bar relocation brackets. Just all the little things that you need, is going to be included when you purchase something from a reputable company that specializes in Subarus. That's what you want. You want somebody that's specializing in Subarus. Again, I did not see any mention or recommendation for brake line spacers. I didn't see any recommendation for sway bar relocation brackets. I didn't see any recommendation for multi-link spacers or trailing arm spacers. So to me, that makes zero sense and just cements the fact to me that these people really don't know Subarus and they're just selling something to you. So keep an eye out for that if you're looking to purchase a spacer lift. Okay, so what should you be looking for if you're purchasing a strut spacer for your Subaru? Well, if you're going to do anything bigger than a 1-inch lift kit, you need to be a little bit more particular about what you're getting. Because again, once you hit past the 1-inch mark, you're going to need to have your camber correction built into the spacer. And most aluminum spacers don't really have that ability. So personally, I don't run anything that's not a stainless steel spacer. But it works for me. It's tough. It's heavy duty. Now, if I was going to be running something that was 1 inch or below, I would probably get one of the HDPE, which is it's like a plastic. I mean, that sounds cheap, but it's not cheap. It's like a high density polyethylene, I think is what HDP, whatever that stands for. I think that's what it stands for. Actually, you know what? I can consult the Oracle real quick. What does HDPE stand for? Let's find out. Bro, I'm actually not as slow as I thought. It really does stand for high density polyethylene. Okay, so it's a thermoplastic polymer. So companies like Primitive Racing, they do offer like a 1-inch spacer that's HDPE. I actually prefer those even to aluminum, if I'm being honest with you. But once you get up into the 2-inch situation, I don't think it's really hard to beat a good stainless steel, well-constructed spacer. They'll outlast your car, in my opinion. But when you're looking at these, you're probably not going to have your hands on it physically. You're probably going to have to be ordering this online. But you're going to want to look for good welds. You'll notice here that the welds on this kit, I don't think I've seen ADF. They're a little bit overkill. So I mean, they almost weld the thing darn near completely around the base, top and bottom. That's maybe not necessary, but that's just a testament to kind of their commitment to durability. These are what I run on my kits, or on my Subarus. These are the kits that I use. Let's take a look here. Obviously, this is going to be a super ghetto way of measuring, but that's over 3 inches worth of material there. This is over 4 inches. So you got one weld that's over 4 inches long and then 2 that are over 3. I've actually seen lift kits from some big box brands that are like Jeep lift kit companies. And, they've got these small little welds, and that's probably fine. But if you're going to make a product that people are going to just leave on their car indefinitely, why wouldn't you spend the extra 50 cents to just weld it all the way around? Why wouldn't you powder coat it? Why wouldn't you use grade 10 hardware? These are all things that I keep in mind. So look out for good welds. Ask the grade of the hardware that they use. Anything below an 8 is a no-go, but if you can get 10, that's what I would do. Powder coat. You can get raw spacers if you want. I know LP Aventura sells some raw steel spacers. I think there's probably a couple other options. If you do that, that's okay, but it needs to be painted, and it needs to be painted well or powder coated prior to being installed on your car. I just opt for lift kits that are already powder coated because it's super, super durable. It doesn't cost a lot more to have your kit powder coated by the manufacturer because they're doing it in bulk. So this kit specifically was powder coated in Oregon State and just done by a family company that Patrick works with. They're getting a bulk discount because they're taking 1,000 units a week over to these shops and having them done. So they're getting a bulk discount, and they in turn can pass that along to customers. Or you could paint it if you wanted, but I wouldn't do that. I would just buy it powder coated. So yeah, those are the big things that you want to look out for. Camber correction, right? You need that offset. You want camber correction, good hardware, grade 8 or above, good welds, powder coating, and you want to get something that is reputable. This is a little bit more intangible, but a really easy way to tell if a company is going to be good to deal with and whether or not they're reputable is to call them, email them, or message them on social media. If you get a quick response from them and they seem genuinely interested in helping you out, that's a better sign that they'll take care of you if there's any problems. Now, the opposite is also true. If they do not seem interested in helping you when they haven't even taken money from you yet, and there's the potential for you to give them money and they're not really all that interested in being helpful, how much less helpful do you think they'll be once you've already taken money, or once they've taken money from you and you've given them money and you've already had your transaction and they don't really have any obligation to you? Do you really think they're going to be all that helpful? My guess is probably not. Now, the other thing you can do is you can go on to online forums like SubaruOutback.org, SubaruForester.org, all these different online forums. You can go on some of the Facebook groups. You could also visit the liftedimports.com website. I try to make sure that I don't put anything on that site that's not reputable. I talk about a lot of different products on there, but for the most part, I try to push people towards stuff that I know is going to be well built and that's going to treat them properly. So just kind of get a feeling for the overall feeling of the company. If they don't have a website, don't buy from them. If they don't have a website and they're only on eBay or Amazon, that's not a good sign. You want to make sure that they're an established company and they're not some fly-by-night type of situation. because I have seen these kits be sold under probably 6 different names. And, it's like, when I look at the reviews, I see a bunch of people in the reviews being like, this isn't a 3-inch lift kit. Like, I thought this was going to be a 3-inch lift kit, and my wheels were all messed up in the back and didn't look right. So my guess is, they get enough bad reviews and then they just churn and burn to a new brand name. Maybe. I don't know. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing, and I don't like it. Okay, finally, one thing I'd like to send home with you is we are a very niche group of people. We off-road in Subarus. Take a seat and think about that for a second. Do you know how stupid that sounds? We literally off-road in Subarus. We are a very niche group of folks. We're idiots if you really think about it. We're the people who should just go buy a 4x4 or something. But no, like, this is what we do and we love doing it. Now, what I think is very impressive and something that I appreciate is when businesses, they will invest their time and capital to research and develop kits for us. And then all these other offshore companies, they knock them off and they sell them, and it is what it is. They're obviously not as good quality, but I don't know about you guys, but I appreciate the fact that there's companies out there that are willing to be the front runners on creating new products for us. I don't care even if it's the same exact product. Let's just say there was no difference in quality between the two. You already know I'm going to pay $100 extra bucks, $200 extra bucks, whatever it is, to support a small business that is innovating, and they're the ones bringing us these products. I appreciate that. Just like companies like Torque Masters. Why would a company like Torque Masters ever invest the time and money into creating a rear locker for Subarus? Anybody in their right mind would say that's a stupid idea. Why would you create a lunchbox style locker for Subarus? That's dumb. But they did that for us. They did it for us, and of course, there needs to be profit in it for them. But for people to recognize that there is a desire from us for these parts, I'm going to go out and I'm going to support these brands. I'm going to support and vote for them with my dollar so that they can continue to innovate for us. And as new models come out, they can continue to create new kits for us. And I've just had nothing but good interactions as a customer with brands like Anderson Design and Fabrication. I've recently become friends with Patrick over there, but that's only been, it's been within the last year and a half. Prior to that, I've been buying parts from that guy back, like right around the time when he first started his company. And I was always shocked that when I would call, he would pick up the phone. I never called and got anybody other than Patrick, and he would always answer my questions. Super friendly, super kind, just a good dude, very knowledgeable, always down to take time to help educate me, and I appreciate that. Same thing with Primitive Racing. I've called Primitive Racing on numerous occasions before. I now know the owner of Primitive, but even back in the day when I was just some goofy kid that was just getting into this stuff, I would call them and ask questions and send them emails, and they were always super helpful. And same with, Rally Tech, same with a lot of these other companies that are Subaru specific, that are, they're in this community with us. They're not just a big lift kit manufacturer that's trying to make a quick buck off of Subaru owners. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm happy that we're making a splash and that big companies are recognizing that, okay, there's a desire here for these products. But my money is always going to be spent somewhere where I know that they actually care about us. They're not going to send us out the door with trash garbage products. And that's kind of my opinion. That's what I think. You can disagree or agree with me if you want. But all that being said, I don't care if you buy a cheap Amazon lift kit. Should you buy a cheap Amazon lift kit? I mean, you can, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm not doing that, and I wouldn't suggest it to a friend or family member, so I'm not going to suggest it to you guys. So I know this is long-winded. I know it's kind of silly, but I hope that if you are in the market for a new lift kit, I hope that this kind of opens sort of your eyes to this a little bit, because I remember when I got started in this, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where to go for information. I didn't know anything. And honestly, it was even worse because I had to piece together lift kits from other Subarus before you could really buy lift kits. You had to make them with, like, I would have to take Forester suspension and cobble it together and put it on my other Subarus to make them taller. So again, this is long-winded. I'm sorry, but I really hope that this gives you a little bit of insight. And regardless of the choice that you ultimately make when you're purchasing a lift kit, I hope that you at least make that choice as an educated one. I hope that when you make that choice, you feel confident in it, regardless of what it is. And if there's any questions that you got, you can leave a comment, or you can head over to the liftedimports.com website. Shoot us an email on there. If any of this is helpful for you, I'd appreciate if you would subscribe so that we know you guys are following along and that this is helpful for you. Until next time, I hope you have a fantastic day. We'll see you out on the trails. Hope you guys are staying safe and crushing it. We'll see you guys soon.